4 months after a death row inmate died following complications during his execution, the state has released details of its investigation. The Department of Public Safety says problems with the insertion of an IV line, an inadequate needle, lack of training, and poor communications all contributed to the April 29th execution that many refer to as botched. And while the report issues recommendations for changes to the execution protocol, investigators say the drugs used on death row inmate Clayton Lockett did what they were supposed to do.
Shortly after the death of inmate Clayton Lockett on April 29th, Oklahoma Department of Corrections Director Robert Patton addressed reporters concerning the 43 minutes it took Lockett to die. Previous state executions took less than 15 minutes.
There was some concern at that time that the drugs were not having the effect, so the doctor observed the line and determined that the line had blown.
Patton told reporters he wouldn't take questions, but was pressed to define what he meant by the line had blown.
What does line has blown mean?
Yes.
The vein blew.
The vein blue.
The vein.
Yes.
Lockett's vein.
Yes.
So blue. What does that mean?
It means the vein exploded.
So where
His
was
vein
he?
exploded.
Where was he when he?
Since then, an autopsy conducted by the medical examiner's office in Dallas, Texas, reveals Lockett's vein didn't blow. The problem was the IV line, which was inserted into Lockett's groin. Department of Public Safety Commissioner Michael Thompson headed up the 4-month execution investigation and announced findings this week.
The process is designed to be introduced to the veins. After some point, it was obvious that there was something going on, and when the sheet was uncovered, that's when it was discovered that you had the large presence in the tissue. So the timeliness of it, I'm not a doctor, I can't address that, but it feels to me that it probably took longer to circulate through the body since it went into the tissue versus circulating through the veins.
Lead investigator DPS Captain Jason Holt says the people in the execution room reported the covering of Lockett's groin area concealed the insertion site failure.
Those involved with the execution stated that they could have noticed the problem earlier if they had been monitoring the insertion site during that time.
According to the report, the attending doctor asked for a longer needle to insert into the groin, and there was not one available. Medical personnel interviewed say that was a problem.
They stated that in a medical setting, they would have rather used something longer than what was used, which was, I believe, around an inch and a quarter. So did it play a factor? I can't sit here and say that that was the only factor, but I would say that was at least contributing to that.
Thompson says those involved with the execution followed protocol, but the investigation reveals many problems with that protocol. The report lists 11 recommendations for future executions. Those include improvements in training for those involved in the execution process, a backup plan in case something goes wrong, and better communication. When the problem with Lockett's IV line was discovered and no remedies were available, Corrections Director Patton made an order to stop the execution.
As you move forward, everyone should know if you say stop, what does stop mean? Everyone should know if you say halt, what does halt mean?
Patton also asked for a stay of Lockett's execution before he was declared dead. Governor Mary Fallin, who was attending a Thunder game the evening of the execution, says she was in the communication loop via her attorneys.
So I had several phone calls during that time that there were challenges with the IV lines. And then when there came a time that Department of Corrections was worried about the establishment of the line, thus they began some of the changes in the processes that night, then I said, if there's a problem, do they recommend that we do a stay on the execution? In which my legal counsel said, yes, they do recommend that we have a stay. I said, okay, go ahead and issue a stay. And when they were on the line, she says, the governor just said, let's have a stay on the execution. They said, the inmates just passed away.
As to whether Lockett's execution could be characterized as botched, Director Thompson said,
Different people have different perspectives. And how you describe this execution is how you describe it. At the end of the day, the drugs that were used to execute inmate Lockett for the crimes that he committed worked. So whether or not you consider that botched or not, I can't control how people report this story.
Governor Fallon says the state will review the recommendations from the investigation.
But whatever we need to do as a state to make sure that our protocols are effective, that they're humane, we're going to do in the state. And if it requires more funding, if it's needed, or if different equipment's needed, then we'll certainly look at doing that.
And Fallon says no more executions will be scheduled until new protocols are in place.